What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Fat Boys Dynasty podcast presented by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network, live on the Fantasyholics Podcast YouTube channel. I'm Bo, no Brent tonight. He's got a conflicting schedule. Seems like we've been really struggling to get together, except for on Sunday mornings lately. Hopefully that changes in the foreseeable future. But nonetheless, wanted to make sure we got content out to you guys. Wanted to make sure at least one half of the Fat Boys was present. I know last week Brant came out and did a solo to try to get even with me for doing one 2 weeks prior. So we'll see whether we're together again next week or if it's another solo. But yeah, just again, wanted to make sure we get plenty of content to you guys. Obviously, we're in the nitty gritty of the fantasy season. Another devastating injury this past week to Cam Scatabo. I mean, one of the most fun, running backs to watch on the season. Just another gruesome injury with his ankle, facing the wrong direction there. So definitely hoping for a speedy recovery for him, obviously, for fantasy purposes. And man, those Giants were they're going to be fun to watch next year when you get, Cam on the field with Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors all together. That team's going to be electric. They're going to put up points next year. It's going to be fun to watch. So definitely hoping for the best for Cam Scatabo as he progresses. But I wanted to come at you guys a little bit different this week. Traditionally when I'm on the show by myself, or one of my favorite things to do on the show is I'm consistently talking trades, preaching about how you don't want to get too stagnant in your rosters, and really kind of just trying to give you guys an idea of what some current real life values are for some players that I think are available or could be potentially available. This week, I wanted to do something a little bit different than that. I wanted to come out and do something that's typically more Brant style than it is mine. But I wanted to come at you guys this week and talk a little bit about some matchups that you might want to look forward to, over the course of the remainder of this season. When we talk about, you got some players that have been, fringe starts at best, with guys like Quentin Johnston. The first 3 weeks he was electric, and then if you've played him any time since then, you've been woefully disappointed. The list goes on. But anyway, some of those guys may be guys you want to potentially look into playing. So I've got some teams that I want to talk about that are near the bottom, if not the worst teams in the league against either the pass or the rush. And we're going to start with the pass, and a couple of these two teams do overlap. So obviously we'll focus on those a little bit more at the end, but we'll start with the pass, from working our way from, not the worst up to the worst. So Ravens are fifth from worst currently against the pass. They're giving up 250 yards, 250.7 yards of passing per game to go along with 14 total touchdowns on the season. This is a defense for the Baltimore Ravens that honestly a lot of people thought we're going to be a powerhouse defense. There's so much talent on it, and it's just not come to fruition. So this year, the three teams that are going to get decent matchups against the Baltimore Ravens down the playoff stretch are the Cincinnati Bengals, the New England Patriots, and the Green Bay Packers. So, again, with those first two, obviously the normal ones in Chase and T. Higgins. Then you go to New England and Kayshon Boutte and Stephon Diggs are kind of your guys there. And then Green Bay, I mean, man, what a crapshoot that is. We went into the season thinking it was going to be Matthew Golden. We got Christian Watson back this week. He looked good. So that one's definitely interesting. The next defense that is fourth worst against the pass, this one did kind of surprise me a little bit when I looked it up, just because it's been of how bad this team has been this year, or how good this team has been this year, excuse me. I guess how refreshingly good they've been is the Indianapolis Colts. They're currently giving up 252 passing yards per game to go along with 14 touchdowns. Again, in the playoff stretch, they get the Seattle Seahawks, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Travis Hunter, I think he comes out and sets the world on fire. Several weeks ago, Liam Cohen was saying, we're not going to, overwhelm Travis Hunter this year. His role is going to be kind of what it is. We don't expect to add a lot more to his plate. Then he kind of has that huge game overseas prior to their bye week, and Liam Cohen's just preaching, Travis Hunter's name at this point. So if you've got Travis Hunter and you've held him, or you were able to acquire him when the dip happened, congratulations, because it appears that is coming. The next team I'm going to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals. I will save their schedule for the running back portion of this because they are on this list twice. Not surprisingly, they're giving up 256 yards against the pass to go along with 19 touchdowns on the season. So definitely a team that's getting just abused on both sides of the ball this year. And in the couple games that they have been in it, offensively, obviously the other teams putting up more points. They're not just running the ball the whole game. So that's kind of where we're at with this pass game. Probably on paper, one of the worst defenses in the league this year. Second, probably only to the Dallas Cowboys, who are also on both of these lists, not surprisingly as well. So currently for the Cowboys, giving up 258.6 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, the most of the season. That defense is very feast or famine when you got guys like Bland out there and Stephon Diggs, Quandre Diggs. Those guys are they're taking cuts on the ball. They're trying to make plays. They're trying to take, house call almost every ball that's thrown their way. So if they get it, putting up points. If they don't get it, wide receivers gashing them. So, it's not a great way to live right now, being a feast or famine defense. And then the team that is the absolute worst against the pass this year is the Pittsburgh Steelers, oddly enough, giving up 273.3 yards per game through the air. Only 13 touchdowns, though, so they're kind of stopping teams when it matters to an extent, right? Obviously, the yards still add up for us in fantasy. So when you look at the teams that do get the benefit of playing Pittsburgh down the stretch, you've got the Miami Dolphins. So huge upgrade to Jalen Waddle if he stays on that roster. Definitely somebody that you're going to be excited about playing down the stretch. Detroit Lions, obviously, that kind of speaks for itself. Amon-Ra's kind of matchup proof anyway. Jamison Williams has been so feast or famine, who knows? And then last is the Cleveland Browns. So if that passing game does continue to elevate, with Dylan Gabriel, and he can get, more footing underneath of him and really start to become a consummate professional, maybe Isaiah Bond or Jerry Jeudy or one of those guys in week 17 is relevant. More than less likely, you're probably not going to be playing those guys in your championship week if you make it, but Harold Fannin and David Njoku for sure should be in your starting lineups if you make it to the championship with those guys. They're probably a big part of it. All right, moving on to the run NFL defenses that are the worst against the run. Currently coming in at number 5 overall, or fifth worst overall, is the Miami Dolphins. This is a team that's giving up 145 yards on the ground, 10 touchdowns. Probably would have been worse if my Atlanta Falcons could have done anything with Bijan Robinson and moved the ball. But when you have crusty Kirk Cousins out there, I'm salty. It is what it is. I'm a little salty, a little jaded, little hurt by what happened on Sunday, but we move on. Anyway, Miami Dolphins currently have the Pittsburgh Steelers. So again, Jalen Warren, if he's still there, if it's not him, I just have to assume Caleb Johnson gets going at some point, maybe. But either way, either one of those guys. Then they have Cincinnati. So love that for Chase Brown. He's really starting to bounce back here the last 2 weeks. Definitely looked much better the last 2 weeks. It's almost as if Joe Flacco and having a competent quarterback under center is really helping that team over Jake Browning. So definitely interested to see that matchup for Chase Brown late in the season. And then week 17, Bucky Irving. Again, when you talk about dream matchups, does it get any better than that for a running back in the championship league? If your team manages to tread water without Bucky all these weeks and you make it to the championship, you're going to be very, very happy with that. I already mentioned this team on the passing side of things, or against the pass, but you got the Dallas Cowboys giving up 1 more yard than the Dolphins at 146, also 10 touchdowns. So again, that schedule, to kind of wrap it up, you've got the Vikings, Chargers, and Commanders. So how interesting is it that, Aaron Jones, Kamani Vidal, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt could end up being must starts for fantasy, but that's kind of where we're trending if this Cowboys defense doesn't improve vastly in between now and your fantasy playoffs. So again, kind of one of those to keep an eye on is the running backs playing against the Dallas Cowboys. Team we talked about a little bit prior to the getting into the nitty gritty here is the New York Giants defense. They are not as fun to watch as that offense is over there in New York, but they're currently giving up 148.9 yards to the running back. So, not good for them, for the New York Football Giants. Again, very interesting here when I bring up some of these teams, because we just talked about them just a minute ago. Washington with Corey Krosky-Merritt in week 15. Week 16 is the Minnesota Vikings with Aaron Jones, and 17 is Ashton Genty. So again, I literally said I wasn't going to turn this into a trade episode, but here we are. I'm wondering if maybe Corey Krosky-Merritt, with how bad he's been, and Aaron Jones just coming back from injury, aren't players you should sniff around just because of how juicy their playoff matchups are. Second worst team against the run this season so far is the Buffalo Bills, giving up 150.3 yards to running backs per game, as well as 10 touchdowns. Again, this is another defense that you kind of had higher expectations for than what they're doing currently. But when you talk about, running backs that are going to get this team in the playoffs, that maybe it's a little more, exciting than you necessarily would have thought it was. Week 15, you've got the New England Patriots. Is it going to be Trevion Henderson at that point? Is it still Ramondre Stevenson? Either way, good matchup for those guys in the first week of your fantasy playoffs. Week 16 is Cleveland Browns. Big boost for Quinshon Judkins. And 17, Saquon Barkley is going to do Saquon Barkley things. But honestly, how good of a matchup is that from the NFL? Week 17 is Philly versus the Bills. So that's definitely one to look forward to. But again, the worst team against the run this year is also the third worst against the pass. It is the Cincinnati Bengals, as you were probably holding out, for who number one was. I'm sure you had a decent little idea. But they are currently giving up 151.9 yards to the running back per game. Again, 10 touchdowns. That's kind of the going rate to be one of the worst defenses in the league against the run, is to give up 10 touchdowns. So, weeks 15, 16, and 17, you do have the Ravens, who actually the Ravens play them twice in the last 2 or 5 weeks of the season. So big ups for Derrick Henry there, potentially Keaton Mitchell too, if he keeps getting a roll. Then they do have the Dolphins. So Devon Achane becomes extremely intriguing week 16. And then they finish it up with the Arizona Cardinals. And that's another one that's interesting. Is it Trey Benson? Does he come back? Is he healthy 100% by then? If so, you're playing him. If he's the back, is it still Bam Knight? Who's going to be the guy for Arizona? As we get to that point of the season, it's definitely going to be one of those things that it's Trey Benson's probably available on your waivers and redraft leagues right now. And in Dynasty, he's probably collecting dust on somebody's IR. I imagine you could probably go acquire him fairly cheap as well. Again, not trying to do typical Fatboy Bo things here and get on my trade soapbox, but it is very easy to do when you consider the price that some of these players are going to command right now and just how juicy some of these playoff matchups are. So again, I honestly hadn't thought about it until I got, sat down to start preparing my notes for this show. But man, Corey Krosky-Merritt, or more affectionately as people refer to him as Bill, or Aaron Jones, could be guys that help win you your championship if you're willing to roster them, because again, you talk about those juicy matchups with them playing the Cowboys and then the Giants. It definitely becomes something that's worth looking at and seeing, maybe going and kick the tires, seeing what the prices is, maybe or seeing what the prices are, get my proper grammar out there. If those guys happen to be available, and maybe somebody doesn't value them very highly in your leagues, maybe you can go steal them and stash them and wait and see, and maybe they start looking a little better and you're a little more confident starting them against those very favorable matchups down the stretch. But anyway, I think that does it for my matchup portion of this show. Let's get into the underdog plays for Thursday night. We have to come at you guys with the underdog plays. Use the code HOLICS on Underdog. Get some free scratch to play some of these games with, make them a little more interesting. We do have what could be an intriguing game. I think it's kind of a must-win for both teams Thursday night. We'll talk about it on the other side of the video. So we do have the Ravens traveling down to Miami and playing the Miami Dolphins tomorrow night for a Thursday night game. This is a game that I think will be more fantasy or more fun to watch than a lot of Thursday night football games have been this year, with more fantasy relevancy than I think we thought we'd have just a few weeks ago, because this team was kind of abysmal. It sounds like Lamar's going to be back potentially. Derrick Henry looked good last week. Zay Flowers has been good. Mark Andrews is still like, what's going on there? But anyway, I'm going to start it off with a guy I just talked about or brought up in Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews is still a important part of this offense, maybe lesser or to a lesser degree than what he once was. But I still think this is a guy that, when you talk about the Baltimore Ravens pass catchers and guys that Lamar Jackson's just very comfortable with, I think Mark Andrews is still pretty high on that list. Obviously, he's not getting the deep shots and things of that nature. He's not going to have 15 targets or be the tight end he was 3 or 4 years ago. But I think he's still serviceable. I see him going higher than 28.5 receiving yards. Again, when you talk about teams that are not very good against the pass or the run, the Dolphins aren't in the top 5 for giving up passing yards, but they're not far from it. It's just not a very good defense this year. And I look for Mark Andrews to have 3 or 4 receptions. Speaking of receptions, I've got Jalen Waddle to have higher than 4.5 receptions. The Ravens are the 5th worst team against the pass. Tua did torch my Atlanta Falcons last week, which maybe the Atlanta Falcons are just that bad. I don't know. I'm going to hold out hope that Tua maybe figured something out. But I think Waddle has a big week this week. I think, again, when you talk about teams not good against the pass, the Ravens are right there. Waddle's kind of the focal point of that pass-catching core right now, so I expect him to have a field day. And then last but not least, I expect this man to do things that make us reminiscent of his namesake, and that's King Henry. I think Derrick Henry has higher than 97.5 total yards between the rush and the pass. It's been a while since we've seen him rip a long one. It's been a while since we've seen him take a running back screen for 30 yards. So I'm looking forward to seeing Derrick Henry do just that. So if you're like me and you maybe you don't have as much fantasy value on a game as you do others, I'm a degenerate. I'm in way too many dynasty leagues. I own way too many different players and too many different teams, but I only have a few shares of any Ravens outside of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and I don't know as though I have a Dolphin in any league. So for me to be really interested in this, I got to have something on the line. So that's what I'm going to put. If you want to tell me, be happy to have you guys do so with me. But other than that, that's kind of where I'm at. We do have a real quick trade question. Joe says, trade Davante Adams, Kenneth Walker, and a 28 second for Devon Achane. Ooh. Yeah, I think I do. I think I do, Joe. I mean, if you're a team that's contending for a championship, I think you definitely take that trade. Davante Adams has been really good, absent Puka Nacua, but Puka should be back this week coming out of the bye week. Kenneth Walker in that Seattle backfield has been so hard telling who's going to be the guy, right? Kenneth Walker falls in the end zone one week, and then next week it's Zach Charbonnet, and then you try to hope for that, and it doesn't happen again. So, and as far as the 28 second round picks are already dart throws as it is, but that's 3 years from now. You got time to recoup that second round pick elsewhere if you decide you need it. I think I smashed that. If you're getting the Devon Achane side of it, I'm 100% taking that. Especially if I think my team is, a contender, which I imagine you are with Davante Adams on your roster. You've probably gotten some wins out of him the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I think you definitely do. Devon Achane is still a top 10, back in dynasty and redraft landscapes for the rest of the season. So I think you do comfortably take that trade. You stash him or you put him in your lineup, you smash accept, and you're very happy riding him down to the playoffs. So Joe, do that trade. If I was you, do it with a smile on your face, sir. So I do think that wraps it up for us tonight, or for us. I'm so used to saying it. Wraps it up for me tonight on the this episode of the Fat Boys Dynasty podcast. Again, hopefully next week, Brant and I are able to get back together in studio and come at you guys, together. But at the very least, we will be together live Sunday, 10:30 Eastern time. We try to go for about 90 minutes. So if you got any start-sit advice that you need during the course of Sunday morning, setting your lineups before kickoff, come hang out with Brant and I. You know, we talk DFS, we talk underdog plays, we talk lineups, and of course, most importantly, when you're on a Fat Boys podcast show, we talk food. So come hang out with us on Sunday morning, 10:30 Eastern time. Be live for about 90 minutes answering start-sit questions. That does it for me today. As always, stay hungry and stay fat, my friends.